For more on Trump's tariffs, let's go now to Radhika Desia. She's a professor in the Department of Political Studies at the University of Manitoba. She's also a visiting professor of international development at the London School of Economics, and she joins me now from London. I really appreciate your time this evening, Radhika. Now, the president's tariff plan is designed to spur a renaissance in domestic manufacturing and tax revenue, but many economists warn that he is steering the US economy towards slower growth and higher prices. Which is it?
I think I agree with the economists. The idea that suddenly imposing these tariffs is going to make producers invest in the United States is very unreal. For starters, nobody knows whether these policies will continue beyond the Trump administration. Quite frankly, given the mess he's making of the economy, we don't know how long he's going to last. And moreover, it's also the case that the reliance of most of the world on the US market is not as great as this strategy assumes. The strategy assumes that the reliance of the rest of the world on the US is so great that people will invest there. But no, the US share of world imports is somewhere between 10 and 15%. That's not a small number, but it's not huge either. And in any case, for more and more countries are trading with China. China has a huge economic gravity around the world. Plus, growth is becoming more domestic market centered. So it's not at all clear that he's going to persuade people to invest in the United States.
Trump argues that other countries have been ripping off the US and that these tariffs will combat that unfairness. Is there some truth to that? And can he, in fact, bring manufacturing back to the US?
There are two ways of looking at this relationship. You can say that other countries are ripping off the United States in the sense that they are manufacturing more, and for the last many decades, the United States has been deindustrializing. On the opposite side, the United States has been the beneficiary of cheap imports from around the world, which since about 1980 till about 2021, kept inflation very low in the United States. And there is absolutely no doubt that these tariffs are going to lead to higher inflation, which is going to complicate matters for the Federal Reserve.
We've been anticipating these tariffs for quite a while, and governments have been looking at their own economies and how they might manage it. What might this mean for European nations?
I think that, again, the European nations, of course, they are going to retaliate. Ursula von der Leyen has already said that they are going to do that. The UK has announced a more cautious approach, but we'll have to see. But basically, they're all the UK is not so reliant on exporting to the United States in terms of goods. The European Union may be, but I think the European Union is increasingly going to consider its options and reorienting its trading relationships with the rest of the world.
Canada has been largely spared from new tariffs, but it did say it would retaliate. Mexico has said it won't do tit-for-tat tariffs. How will countries determine their response, and at what cost to their own economies?
Well, I think this is a very interesting question, and I would say that probably it makes sense if a lot of countries decided that they are not going to retaliate, because retaliation only means that you are going to compound the pain. Because if you retaliate, you're going to increase the prices of your imports. So I think a better strategy would be to adopt a long-term strategy of orienting trade away from the United States. I think this is probably what things are going to settle down to, even if in the short run, some parts of the world decide to retaliate. I think that on the whole, what's happening in the United States is that it's entering an exceedingly uncertain era. And the one thing economies don't need is uncertainty, whether it is for consumption or investment. People who are going to lay out money, they do not need uncertainty. And what the Trump administration has just done is massively increase uncertainty, because there's a couple of different things. Number one, exactly how these tariffs will apply is not clear. What exactly is an American-made car on which 25% tariffs are going to be applied? Plus, the Trump administration said it expects governments around the world to line up and try to negotiate down the tariffs, which means that these tariffs are not going to necessarily stay in place. Plus, when asked how long the tariffs would apply, the Trump administration's reply was that they would apply as long as the Trump administration decided that they should apply. That is to say, whatever. And finally, what's really interesting is that the Trump administration has applied these tariffs in a big show of force. But I think the underlying reason for this has nothing to do with reindustrializing the United States, nothing to do with increasing investment in the United States, and everything to do with paving the way for big tax cuts. The expected revenue from tariffs is going to lead to immediate tax cuts in the United States. So all these tax cuts are going to take place on the backs of ordinary working Americans who are going to pay higher prices, and they are the ones who will be paying the tariffs.
If the US overplays its hand in alienating its allies today, what will come next? Might global powers realign global trade and leave the US behind? Will there be a vacuum that will be filled by, say, China?
First of all, China is already filling the vacuum. So that's an absolute no-brainer. Today, China is the most important trading partner and economic partner for the overwhelming majority of countries in the world. And the United States is not there at all. Secondly, I think that this behavior that the Trump administration is showing, is manifesting, it is only going to reduce further at an accelerated pace the importance of the United States in the world economy, which means that the United States' ability to control what happens in the world economy is going to go down further at a faster rate.
All right, Radhika Desia, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for your insight. Really interesting.
Thank you.